Chapter 805. Nan Tianlong, on the other hand, was a down-to-earth and hard-working person. He carried a large piece of wood and began to drive it into the ground. Suddenly, someone muttered, "Why does our territory seem to be much smaller than theirs?" Everyone was taken aback and looked at the stall opposite them. It seemed to be a lot smaller. It seemed to be missing a third of the area. Mu Bing frowned and said, "Everyone paid the same amount of money, so it stands to reason that the size of the stall should be the same. This has always been the case." "Tianlong, what's going on?" Nan Tianlong, who had just picked up a large piece of wood, was startled when he heard this. He threw away the things in his hands and scratched his head awkwardly. "Master, I'll go take a look." He strode to the crowded passageway, then glared at him and walked towards the stall next door. Everyone looked at each other speechlessly, not knowing what was going on. At this moment, Nan Tianlong's angry roar suddenly came from next door. "Qi Fengsheng, hurry up and give up your spot. I paid the money, what right do you have to take our spot?" The flow of people on the temporary street suddenly stopped and looked over. Mu Bing and Mu Tianjiao's expressions changed greatly. They saw a slightly chubby man come out from next door, followed by two people. Nan Tianlong followed them angrily and kept shouting, "Qi Fengsheng, hurry up and give up your spot." The man called Qi Fengsheng did not even bother to pay attention to Nan Tianlong. He pinched the thin mustache on his lips and stared at Mu Bing with a teasing smile. "President Mu, there aren't many of you anyway. Why do you have to occupy such a large territory? No matter what, we come from the same place. We should help each other, don't you think so?" Mu Bing immediately shouted in a deep voice, "Qi Fengsheng, don't go too far. This is not a place for you to behave atrociously." A group of people immediately gathered on the street to watch the show. Qi Fengsheng's gaze turned cold. He glanced at Yu Qianqiu and the others and coldly snorted. "Mu Bing, don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. If you behave yourself, you might be able to get back some of your capital. Otherwise, I guarantee that your people won't be able to enter the divine ruin realm." Everyone's expressions changed drastically. The other party was clearly telling everyone that after entering the divine ruin realm, they would attack the people of 8 Advancement Society and 4 Links Society. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. Why did it feel like he had met a landlord tyrant? However, it was none of his business, and he was not familiar with the situation here, so he stood in the crowd and did not say anything. "You." Mu Bing was furious, but Mu Tianjiao pulled him back. She looked at Qi Fengsheng with disdain and said indifferently, "Father, there's no reason to talk to this kind of person. Why bother talking to him?" After saying that, he leaped into the air and flew to the side of a golden-robed man in the air. He pointed down and said something, as if he was complaining. Qi Fengsheng calmly glanced at her and sneered, "Damn girl, you're so stubborn. One day, I'll make you strip naked and serve me honestly." The two men behind him suddenly snickered. Yu Qianqiu sighed slightly. It seemed that this guy had already straightened out his connections. Otherwise, he would not be so fearless. As he expected, the golden-robed man in the air glanced down coldly and nodded slightly at Qi Fengsheng. Instead, he reprimanded Mu Tianjiao, "Get out of my way. Don't interfere with my duty. Otherwise, I'll kill you." Qi Fengsheng immediately laughed and cupped his hands at the golden-robed man in the air to express his gratitude. Nan Tianlong immediately shouted, "Motherf *Ker, you've gone too far." Just as he was about to make a move, he was stopped by Mu Bing, who had an angry look on his face. Those golden-robed men were not people they could afford to offend. The people from 4 Links Society suddenly felt a little ashamed. Mu Tianjiao, who was in the air, instantly turned pale. Her petite and exquisite body became even more weak and helpless. The golden-robed man shouted again, "Get out of the way. Do you want me to make a move?" Mu Tianjiao slowly floated away and looked around with a pale face. Suddenly, she saw a group of golden-robed men flying over from afar. She immediately gritted her teeth and flew into the air to stop them. She bowed almost 90 degrees, cupped her fists, and did not get up. She did not say a word. In an instant, everyone below stared at the sky. Mu Bing and Nan Tianlong's expressions changed drastically. Qi Fengxing's expression also changed. The golden-robed man who had reprimanded Mu Tianjiao before also had a change of expression. He quickly flashed over and shouted angrily, "How dare you! How dare you block the great commander's way? Get out of the way!" The dozen golden-robed men that were flying over had already stopped. Among them, a short-bearded man with a cold expression and a dignified aura waved at the golden-robed man. He then looked at Mu Tianjiao and asked calmly, "What's going on?" Mu Bing and Nan Tianlong quickly flew into the air, saluting the dignified man. Mu Bing said fearfully, "My daughter is ignorant, she shouldn't have offended the great commander. We will return immediately." He pulled Mu Tianjiao. Mu Tianjiao stubbornly shook off her father's hand, and once again bowed to the dignified man. She then cupped her fists and said with grief and indignation, "So it's the great commander. I beg the great commander to uphold justice for my Four Links Chamber of Commerce." The great commander's gaze swept across the surroundings, indifferently saying, "Speak." "Thank you, great commander." Mu Tianjiao cupped her fists and reported, "Although my Four Links Chamber of Commerce is small, it is still a member of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance. We also paid 50 million divine-grade spirit stones to the Immortal Palace to obtain the qualification to enter the Divine Ruin Realm, and obtained a small stall outside the Divine Ruin Realm. This little girl would like to ask the great commander, my Four Links Chamber of Commerce has paid the same amount of money, so why is the Immortal Palace's guard helping others divide my Four Links Chamber of Commerce's stall? If it's because my Four Links Chamber of Commerce paid the same amount of money, please tell us clearly. There is no need to humiliate us in public. My Four Links Chamber of Commerce will naturally give up our stall. We dare not go against the Immortal Palace. Great commander, please tell us clearly." Qi Fengxing's face was deathly pale, and the golden-robed guard who reprimanded Mu Tianjiao was even paler. Mu Bing and Nan Tianlong were terrified, worried that their daughter had offended the great commander. Once the great commander was enraged, the consequences would be unimaginable. Yu Qinshuo's eyes lit up, his evaluation of Mu Tianjiao rose by a notch. Her words were well-mannered and well-mannered. Unless the great commander ignored the Immortal Palace's reputation, he wouldn't make things difficult for Mu Tianjiao in public. "Which stall belongs to your Four Links Chamber of Commerce?" the great commander asked. Mu Tianjiao immediately waved her hand, pointing at the stall that was 1/3 smaller than the others. The great commander glanced at her, his gaze turning piercingly cold as he stared at the guard who colluded with Qi Fengxing, asking indifferently, "You're the one on duty here?" "Yes, yes, yes." The guard was so scared that he couldn't speak clearly. The great commander said indifferently, "Do you have anything to explain?" "It was this subordinate's oversight. There were too many people and I was too busy. Please forgive me, great commander." The guard was trembling in fear. The great commander nodded slightly, "I see. You can't be blamed. However, it seems that your abilities are limited and you're no longer suitable to serve the Immortal Palace. Men, cripple his cultivation and send him back to where he came from. Great commander, forgive." The guard wanted to beg for mercy, but two people had already flashed out from behind the great commander. "Ah!" A miserable scream rang out. His golden robe was stripped off in the blink of an eye. His whole body turned limp and he was carried away by another golden-robed man like a chick. The great commander's gaze turned to the shed that took up more space. One of the people behind him immediately pointed and shouted, "Which chamber of commerce does this belong to?" Qi Fengxing hurriedly rushed over, trembling. He was so scared that he couldn't say a word. He only knew how to keep bowing. The great commander stared at him indifferently and said, "This is my fault for not disciplining my subordinates properly. However, you must immediately tear down that shed. Give up the extra space and return it to the Four Links Chamber of Commerce immediately. Can you do that?" "Yes, yes, yes." Qi Fengxing couldn't say anything else other than this one word. The great commander tilted his head slightly and said, "Send people to patrol the area. If such a situation is discovered again, deal with it as an example." "Yes." one of the people behind him immediately flashed away. The great commander's gaze swept over Mu Tianjiao, looking her up and down. Mu Tianjiao immediately bowed and said, "Thank you, great commander, for your decision." When she straightened up, the great commander and his people were already far away. The matter was finally over. Mu Bing and Nan Tianlong were the first to let out a sigh of relief. The former pulled his daughter away and left. Qi Fengxing also returned, trembling, and hurriedly ordered people to tear down the shed. "Junior sister is still the best. I was scared out of my wits." Nan Tianlong immediately praised when he landed. Then, he carried a wooden frame. He was the only one busy, and the people that the others called seemed somewhat indifferent. Mu Tianjiao glanced at everyone and bit her lip. After all, when they were hired, they didn't say that they were going to help Si Tong with chores, so she couldn't say anything. Mu Tianjiao tucked a lock of hair behind her ear, rolled up her sleeves, and carried a thick wooden pillar and got busy. Although this kind of work wasn't tiring with her cultivation, she was petite and delicate. Carrying a large wooden pillar and being a woman was indeed a tragic sight. Damn it! Yu Qianqiu was speechless. No matter how thick-skinned he really couldn't be thick-skinned when it came to this kind of matter. Thus, he ran over to help. Tao Zhong was startled, but he also followed. When the others saw that the two of them had started working, they couldn't just stand there and help. When Mu Tianjiao passed by Yu Qianqiu with a pile of bamboo sticks in her arms, she suddenly said softly, "Thank you." Yu Qianqiu turned around in surprise, and then waved his hand with a silly smile, indicating that it was no big deal. Everyone worked together, and very quickly, they built a bamboo shed in a short while. Inside the shed, a well-arranged display table was also set up, and all that was left was to display the items for sale. However, it seemed that Si Tong didn't have anything to sell at all, and the shed was empty. After the shed was built, the space inside suddenly became much smaller, and there was no way it could accommodate so many people. After greeting Mu Bing, everyone went out for a walk. Only Mu Bing, his daughter, and Nan Tianlong were left in the shed, discussing their funeral matters. At this moment, Qi Fengxing strolled in with a sullen face. Chapter 806. Shuttling through the bustling crowd, Yu Qianqiu's eyes were fixed on Tao Zhong, asking him all sorts of questions without end. Tao Zhong was really sick and tired of it. He tried several times to shake off Yu Qianqiu, but he found that he couldn't do so no matter how hard he tried. There were several times when he thought he had shaken off Tao Zhong's tail, but he would inadvertently find this guy suddenly asking him questions from behind. Tao Zhong was on the verge of collapsing, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. Little did he know that it was precisely because Yu Qianqiu was familiar with him that he took the opportunity to pat Tao Zhong's shoulder, sacrificing a drop of blood essence to pat Tao Zhong's back. The main reason was to make it convenient for him to contact Tao Zhong, afraid that he would forget about Tao Zhong and not be able to find him. More importantly, if Tao Zhong had any questions, he could look for Tao Zhong at any time. Rows of sheds separated the streets, with people coming and going like the tide. Stalls were filled with things for sale, and there were also stalls like the Four Links Chamber of Commerce that had nothing on sale, waiting for the divine ruin realm to come out. It was a little like waiting for the rice to be cooked, but wasn't the Four Links Chamber of Commerce just waiting for the rice to be cooked? On the large square, rows of sheds lined up. Yu Qianqiu roughly estimated that there were no less than 10,000 stalls. Immediately, he pulled Tao Zhong's sleeve, asking, "Does every stall here have to pay 50 million divine-grade spirit stones?" Tao Zhong reluctantly grunted in agreement, expressing his dissatisfaction. Yu Qianqiu looked at Tao Zhong with a strange expression, but immediately understood that he had troubled the other party too much, and the other party was clearly expressing his dissatisfaction. "This is easy, you'll be satisfied in no time." Yu Qianqiu glanced left and right, then dragged Tao Zhong to a shop diagonally opposite. Pointing at a storage bracelet wrapped around an iron rod, he asked the shopkeeper, "How much is this?" Tao Zhong replied coldly, "This thing is not cheap." The shopkeeper sized up the two people's attire. They didn't look like rich people, but he still smiled. 10 rooms, one divine-grade spirit stone for one, no bargaining. Without a word, Yu Qianqiu took out a divine-grade spirit stone from his storage pouch, throwing it to the shopkeeper. Take one. The shopkeeper caught the divine-grade spirit stone and was dazed for a moment, realizing that he had made a mistake. He immediately took out a storage bracelet, respectfully offering it with both hands. Please check. Yu Qianqiu received it and sent in his divine sense to inspect it. There was nothing wrong with it, so he turned around and stuffed it into Tao Zhong's hand. He smiled and said, I have been troubling Brother Tao for a long time. I have no way to repay you. Tao Zhong was already shocked by Huang's action of casually taking out a divine-grade spirit stone, Tao Zhongyang, and said, seeing as he was, this, I don't know how. Tao, I can't accept. You're using a storage pouch. Tao Zhong was about to return the bracelet to Huang Xiaolong. In the immortal world, those below the immortal realm would rarely wear a storage bracelet, except for those big family's disciples. Itinerant cultivators like them from the immortal world would find it hard to earn 1,000 top-grade spirit stones in a year. However, Yu Qianqiu had given him a storage bracelet worth 10,000 top-grade spirit stones. How could he not be shocked? To him, this was indeed a heavy gift. It's just a bracelet, it's not as serious as you say. I'm just not used to wearing a lump of iron on my wrist. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand to reject Tao Zhong's gift. Although Huang Xiaolong said it casually, Tao Zhong still felt that the gift was too heavy, trying to reject it again. In the end, the shopkeeper chimed in, since it's someone's kind intention, just accept it. This person doesn't look like someone who lacks money. Tao Zhong looked at the two people, a wry smile on his face, then, I'm sorry. After admiring the storage bracelet for a while, Tao Zhong wore it on his wrist, then cupped his fists at Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand, come, let's go, we'll continue our stroll. The shopkeeper quickly interjected, honored guest, I still have a lot of good things here, why don't you take a look? Yu Qianqiu waved his hand, declining the shopkeeper's offer. When the two of them reached the street again, Tao Zhong no longer tried to hide from Yu Qianqiu. Instead, he blindly followed behind Yu Qianqiu, ready to act as a guide at any time. This was called a method to take advantage of others, and it was a very realistic situation. Yu Qianqiu once again asked, every shop here has to pay 50 million divine-grade spirit stones? Tao Zhong immediately answered, that's right, only those who pay the immortal palace are qualified to set up stalls and open shops here. As he spoke, he kept touching the storage bracelet on his wrist, afraid that he might accidentally drop it. Yu Qianqiu sucked in a breath of cold air. There were at least 10,000 shops here, and each shop had to pay 50 million divine-grade spirit stones. Just from this alone, the immortal palace would earn at least a few 100 billion divine-grade spirit stones. That old immortal emperor had struck it rich. This was the benefit of being a big boss. I heard that the sects and trading houses that enter the Divine Ruin Realm can earn a lot of money. Since the Divine Ruin Realm is controlled by the Immortal Palace, why don't they go treasure hunting themselves instead of letting others participate? Yu Qianqiu asked. Who says the Immortal Palace doesn't participate? Tao Zhong laughed. The Divine Ruin Realm only opens once every 100 years. The Immortal Palace naturally wouldn't give up such an opportunity. One must know that the deeper one goes into the Divine Ruin Realm, the more valuable treasures there will be. Although all the big sects and trading houses have spent money to participate, the cultivation of the people they send in is restricted, not allowing people above Immortal Realm to enter. Think about it, in the past countless years, every time the Divine Ruin Realm opened, the outer perimeter has been swept clean countless times. Where would there be anything valuable left? However, it's too dangerous to go deeper, and it's hard for people below Immortal Realm to enter. But the Immortal Palace itself is different. The people they send in won't be restricted by their cultivation. They can go deeper and find more precious and valuable things. Yu Qianqiu blanked for a moment, then words came out of his mouth after a long while. Black, really black, too black, what's the difference between this and daylight robbery? Then he carefully looked around. There's no danger in talking about this topic, right? Tao Zhong shook his head. this topic has been discussed too many times. The Immortal Palace dares to do this. They aren't afraid of others talking behind their backs. They didn't force anyone, they just set a standard. Who told everyone to rush in? Those who didn't get the qualifications to enter would be unhappy instead. It's all because of the monopoly. Yu Qianqiu shook his head speechlessly. When he passed by a shop called Skyward Palace, he paused. The shop's signboard read, "Buying in large quantities. Dragon scale grass, 1,000 divine grade spirit stones per stalk, 100 head vine, 800 divine grade spirit stones per stalk, heavenly violet star, 400 divine grade spirit stones per stalk." In short, there were a lot of things listed on the signboard, and none of them were sold for less than 1 divine grade spirit stone. Seeing the confusion on Huang Xiaolong's face, Tao Zhong immediately explained, "Skyward Palace is the largest alchemy sect in the immortal world. The prices listed here are the prices of items that are not lacking in the market. Some genuine top-grade immortal herbs are not listed here, and are traded in private. Truly good things can go as high as hundreds of millions, billions, or even tens of billions of divine-grade spirit stones. For people like us at the bottom of society, we might not even be able to buy a stalk of dragon-scale grass even after working hard for a lifetime. Poor, poor." The corner of Yu Qianqiu's mouth twitched. Only now did he realize that he had really overestimated himself. He thought he was very rich, but it turned out that his net worth couldn't even compare to a stalk of grass here. What the hell? This was really intolerable. This time, he was really provoked. Secretly gritting his teeth, he turned around and asked with a smile, "These valuable things are in the Divine Ruin Realm?" Tao Zhong nodded, "Of course, otherwise the Skyward Palace wouldn't have hung up a buying signboard here. It all depends on whether everyone has the ability to find them or not. For a small trading house like the Four Links, the reason why they did not hesitate to borrow money to enter the Divine Ruin Realm is because as long as they can find a stock of high-grade immortal herb, they will be able to recoup all the money they spent." Yu Qianqiu's heart skipped a beat, suddenly feeling that his chance to make a fortune had come. He couldn't help looking at the signboard a few more times, wanting to memorize all the valuable things listed on it. But with just one look, he saw the problem. He suddenly realized that he didn't seem to recognize any of the grass listed on the signboard. Even if he entered the Divine Ruin Realm, he would most likely think that it was just a weed. Yu Qianqiu immediately coughed, turned around and asked, "Is there a shop here that sells all kinds of precious items?" "Of course there is. It's rare to see a day like this where all the sects and trading houses in the immortal world gather. It's a good time to do business." Tao Zhong waved his hand and pointed around. "There are only things you can't think of here, and there's nothing you can't buy, as long as you have the money. The various precious items you mentioned should be sold in the Wan Gutong's shop." Yu Qianqiu immediately waved his hand, indicating for him to lead the way. As they walked, he asked, "What does Wan Gutong do?" Although Tao Zhong was surprised that he didn't even know about Wan Gutong, he was already used to his ignorance. He casually explained, "It's the largest auction and appraisal shop in the immortal world, and it's very rich." The two of them strolled along a few streets, asking many people before they finally found Wan Gutong's shop. As soon as the two of them walked in, a well-dressed, beautiful, and graceful woman walked out from the side of several old men. She walked over with a smile and asked, "Do you want to buy, see, appraise, or entrust something to be auctioned?" The dazzling array of items in the shop dazzled Yu Qianqiu, but he didn't recognize many of them. He paused for a moment and asked, "Are there any precious items?" "Yes." The beautiful woman took a few steps back, pointing at the piles of jade archives on the shelves at the side as she introduced, "Antiques, immortal records, medicinal pills, immortal herbs, immortal artifacts, beasts, and all kinds of rare ores and metals. What kind and grade do you need?" Yu Qianqiu was taken aback. "What do you mean by grade?" The beautiful woman was stunned by his question. Tao Zhong hurriedly raised his hand at the woman, gesturing for her to wait for a moment. He whispered into Yu Qianqiu's ear, "Items like these are usually protected with restrictions, and can't be duplicated. Once duplicated, the information recorded inside will be destroyed. Usually, the price is set according to the rarity of the item. The rarer the item, the higher the price. Chapter 807. Yu Qianqiu made an "oh" sound to indicate that he understood. Looking at the items on the shelf, he probed, "How much would it cost if I buy all the items on the shelf?" Tao Zhong turned his head and rolled his eyes. The beautiful and capable woman was taken aback, her gaze sweeping over Yu Qianqiu once more. Although she guessed that this person wouldn't be able to afford it, she still maintained a warm attitude and calculated the price of the whole set of items. She replied with a smile, "If you want to buy all the items of different grades, it would cost a total of 274 pieces of divine grade spirit stones. If you are sincere, we can waive the small change, just 270,000 divine grade spirit stones. Do you need it? So expensive?" Yu Qianqiu exclaimed, walking up to the shelf and casually picking up a piece. Imbuing it with his divine sense, he placed it back down with a frown on his face. "Isn't it just some drawings and some words? How can it be so expensive?" The beautiful woman felt awkward for a moment, but maintained her smile as she explained, "The quality of this account's items is guaranteed. These illustrations are the work of this account's expert appraiser. The authenticity of the illustrations and the real thing are almost perfect. Just based on the variety of items, I dare say that there is no other account that can surpass this account. Furthermore, the description of each item is very detailed, so it's definitely worth it." Yu Qianqiu turned to look at Tao Zhong, asking, "Is what she said true?" Tao Zhong coughed lightly, awkwardly saying, "Wan Gu Tong's reputation is unquestionable in the immortal world. Since she said so, it shouldn't be wrong. 270,000 divine grade spirit stones." Yu Qianqiu rubbed his chin, muttering under his breath as if he was thinking of something. A moment later, he turned to the smiling woman waiting for his reply, "How many sets do you have here?" The woman smiled politely and said, "You can have as many as you want." Yu Qianqiu's eyebrows rose, asking again, "You really can't copy them?" The woman's expression stiffened, and she didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she said, "Of course it can be copied, but this account has a special restriction on it. Only this account can copy it, outsiders can't copy it. To tell you the truth, this is also why I said that you can have as many as you want." Yu Qianqiu sighed with a little regret. It seemed that he would have to spend a lot this time. He waved his hand and said, "Forget it, just give me 100 sets. The woman was stunned. Her alluring red lips moved slightly as she awkwardly smiled and said, "Did you just say you want 100 sets? At this moment, the few old men who had not turned around all turned around and looked at Yu Qianqiu. Tao Zhong opened his mouth wide in disbelief. Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, "No more, no less. I want 100 sets. Oh right, is there a discount for buying a lot?" The woman calmed down after confirming Huang Xiaolong's words. One look was enough to tell that she was someone who had seen the world. She smiled. "One set will be 270,000 divine grade spirit stones, so 100 sets will be 27 million divine grade spirit stones. I'll take 25 million divine grade spirit stones from you, what do you think?" Yu Qianqiu looked at the woman suspiciously. Even if Wan Gu Tong was filthy rich, this decision wasn't something an ordinary disciple could make, right? This woman wasn't simple, all right. Yu Qianqiu nodded his head, carefully observing the woman. "Please wait a moment, I'll sort them out for you." The woman nodded and left, tidying up the jade archives on the shelf. The several old men also came over to help, and very soon, 100 sets of jade archives were sorted out. The woman even used a storage bag to store the jade archives, handing them over to Yu Qianqiu for inspection. Yu Qianqiu was merely checking if the number of jade archives was correct. He had no way of verifying it. However, he believed that since Wan Gu Tong was able to become the industry leader in the immortal world, she wouldn't resort to such underhanded means. Putting away the storage bag, Huang Xiaolong also took out a storage bag for himself, passing it to the woman. "Count it." The woman quickly checked the number of divine grade spirit stones inside the storage bag, smiling. 25 million divine grade spirit stones is correct. She turned around and passed the storage bag to one of the old men behind her. When she turned around again, she saw Yu Qianqiu walking out of the room. She immediately called out, "Wait a moment." Yu Qianqiu turned around with a frown on his face. "We've already cleared the transaction. Is there a problem?" The woman quickly walked over to him, introducing herself with a smile. "I'm Wan Ling. May I know how to address this honored guest? Did she take a liking to me because of my generosity?" Yu Qianqiu thought it was impossible. If it was before, he wouldn't have dared to take out so many divine-grade spirit stones to spend, afraid it would be too conspicuous. But after strolling around the streets, he realized that spending several tens of millions of divine-grade spirit stones wasn't even enough to buy a blade of grass for a wealthy family. It couldn't be considered ostentatious. "I'm just a customer who came and went in a hurry. There's no need to leave my name, right?" Yu Qianqiu's brows were slightly furrowed. Wan Ling smiled, taking out a purple gold medal token, handing it over. "My grandfather is the Wangu Tong sect's chief. This token is convenient for honored guests to have dealings with me. Within this Wangu Tong sect's business scope, if there's anything you need my help with, you can use this token to receive preferential treatment and the best service. Please accept this token." She really isn't an ordinary person. Yu Qianqiu was dazed for a moment. Seriously, this thing should be similar to the VIP card in his previous life. Perhaps he could use it in the future. Reaching out to receive the token, Huang Xiaolong studied it over and over again. There were only 3 simple words Wangu Tong engraved on it. Other than the special material used, there wasn't even a trace of extra pattern. But it was obvious that someone had spent a lot of effort on those 3 words, as they were carved with vivid and lifelike vines. Yu Qianqiu put away the token, cupping his fists in greeting. "This one is Yu Qianqiu. I have some matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave here." The smile on Wan Ling's face grew wider, reaching out a hand. "Take care, I won't send you off." Once the two of them left the shop, Tao Zhong didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Yu Qianqiu's wealth had truly shocked him. Only now did he realize that Yu Qianqiu was not on the same level as him. He was just a mere rogue cultivator, but Yu Qianqiu's background was unfathomable to him. But what he couldn't figure out was, since he was so rich, why would he participate in such a dangerous divine ruin stage general assembly? Tao Zhong rubbed the bracelet on his wrist, and connecting it to Yu Qianqiu's idiotic question, a guess immediately formed in his mind. He had a strong suspicion that this Yu Qianqiu must be some rich family's disciple, the kind that had just seen the world for the first time and went out to gain experience. Several old men from the Wangu Tong shop approached Wan Ling, one of them asking, "Just a mere 20 million divine-grade spirit stones. Is it worth giving out a profound violet token?" Wan Ling smiled but did not reply. Another old man behind her chuckled. "Maybe it's not worth it, maybe it's very worth it. I've never seen anyone buy so many illustrations at once, hee. Illustrations of rare and precious items. Who would spend so much money to buy this kind of thing? Either he has the real thing to compare it to, or there's something wrong with his brain." But did you notice a very special situation? The old man who spoke first was frowning in thought when Wan Ling turned around with a smile, looking at his attire. It's obvious he's not up to standard, yet he could casually take out 20 million divine-grade spirit stones. Although 20 million divine-grade spirit stones is nothing to us, it's not something an ordinary person can take out. The contrast is too big. What puzzles me the most is that he doesn't seem to be familiar with our famous Wangu Tong shop. Also, I can't see through his cultivation. I wonder if the 3 elders can. The second old man nodded. This is the special situation I was talking about. Even with my late-stage great immortal realm cultivation, I can't see through his cultivation. Could it be that he's an early immortal emperor? In the immortal world, which early immortal emperor isn't famous? But I've never seen him before. Isn't this strange? The other 2 elders exchanged a glance. It was obvious from their expressions that they didn't pay much attention. The first old man spoke solemnly. Maybe he took some kind of immortal pill to conceal his cultivation? I hope so. Otherwise, it's too strange. Wan Ling pondered for a moment. Suddenly, the distant sound of a bugle horn came from outside, sharp enough to pierce one's eardrums. Wan Ling raised her head to look at the crowd flying away from the street, her expression solemn. The godly ruin realm is finally open, let's go take a look. It'll also boost the confidence of our Wangu Tong disciples. The three old men nodded, and as she walked out of the shop, the shopkeeper who had been hiding outside immediately came in. When the bugle horn sounded, Yu Qianqiu and Tao Zhong had just returned to Si Tong's shop. Not long after, the other hired people also squeezed in one after another. It seemed like they had all been startled back by the sound of the bugle horn. Everyone excitedly and nervously talked about the opening of the godly ruin realm. Not long after, the crowd on the street outside completely disappeared. Mu Bing stood inside without any reaction. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, feeling that it was a little strange. Yu Qianqiu was in a hurry to go in. He couldn't help but ask, President Mu, are we not going into the godly ruin realm? Mu Tianjiao, who was beside Mu Bing, looked at the crowd and smiled. The godly ruin realm's spiritual energy is very abundant, and it only opens once every 100 years. Who knows what kind of heavenly treasures have grown? Right now is the time when everyone is fighting and robbing, and also when the casualties are the highest. Moreover, it's very crowded right now. It'll take at least half a day for hundreds of thousands of people to go in. We're not in a hurry, we'll go in half a day. Everyone suddenly understood. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, Thank you, miss, for understanding us. Mu Tianjiao smiled and shook her head. At this time, Mu Bing, who had his back facing the crowd, slowly turned around and bowed to the crowd with a solemn expression. This time, my daughter will also be entering the godly ruin realm with everyone. I hope everyone can help take care of her. Nan Tianlong, whose thick brows were knitted together, also bowed to the crowd. Everyone looked at each other speechlessly, wondering if this Mu Bing had gone crazy over money, to actually be willing to put his own daughter in danger. In truth, Yu Qianqiu quite admired Mu Tianjiao, and didn't want anything to happen to her. He couldn't help but frown and say, President Mu, why do you have to do this? Entering depends entirely on luck, and you don't expect your daughter to be able to pick up something good. You'd better reconsider. Some things can't be retrieved once they're lost. Chapter 808. A hint of bitterness appeared on Mu Bing's face, but he did not refute anything. Instead, it was Mu Tianjiao who stood up with her chest out and cupped her fists towards the crowd. She smiled sweetly and decisively. Everyone has misunderstood my father. My father has been trying to stop me from entering the divine ruin realm, but my 4 links chamber of commerce is already swaying in the wind and rain. As my father's only daughter, how can I sit back and do nothing? For me to wait outside the ruins of God for a month without doing anything, I really can't do it. I hope everyone will work together with me to save my 4 links chamber of commerce from this crisis. Mu Tianjiao thanks everyone in advance. As she spoke, she bowed deeply. Everyone looked at each other and sighed in their hearts. It was Mu Tianjiao's misfortune to be born in the 4 links chamber of commerce, but the 4 links chamber of commerce with Mu Tianjiao was a great blessing. Yu Qianqiu could not help but let out a sigh in his heart. A daughter should be like Mu Tianjiao. She was much better than her father. A few miles away from the square, under a huge stone mountain, was a dark cave with a diameter of dozens of meters. White mist was rising from it, lingering outside the cave. A thick and majestic ancient aura was pulsating in and out, shocking everyone outside the cave. Then, the white mist shrank and gathered inside the cave, blooming with a white stream of light and spinning. The hundreds of thousands of people outside stared intently at this scene until the white light in the cave stabilized. It's open, it's open. The crowd burst into excited cheers. The divine ruin realm had finally opened, and everyone's eyes were burning with excitement. Outside the cave were thousands of golden-robed men, each of them looking around vigilantly, keeping the hundreds of thousands of people away from the cave entrance. The stone mountain was also filled with thousands of golden-robed men, watching below. The external affairs commander of the immortal palace, Wu Xiong, stood behind the thousands of golden-robed men, quietly standing beside the cave entrance with his hands behind his back. His cold gaze swept over the hundreds of thousands of people from the various sects and chambers of commerce. He was the commander who had helped Mu Tianjiao out of trouble before. At this moment, the hundreds of thousands of people all stared at the side of the mountain. They saw a team of 100 golden-robed men walking neatly from the side. They lined up in front of Wu Xiong and knelt on one knee, saying, "Greetings, Commander." Wu Xiong nodded slightly and said indifferently, "Let's begin." The 100 people all stood up. The leader waved his hand at them and signaled for them to set off. He took the lead and flew into the swirling white light in the cave. The others also followed him without hesitation. Then, a person walked out from behind Wu Xiong and waved his arm forward. The thousands of golden-robed men immediately changed their formation, forming of one group of 100, of each group of 100, and immediately separated dozens of paths. The hundreds of thousands of people gathered outside immediately surged and slowly moved forward, the immortal of the hundreds of thousands of people had. Of the rules, of. For a time, people from the various sects and merchant guilds could be seen passing through the golden-robed guards and rushing into the cave. As for the situation behind the cave, no one knew. However, everyone could imagine how cruel the bloody competition was, because every time the divine ruin realm opened, out of the hundreds of thousands of people who entered, less than 100,000 would return. Some sects and chambers of commerce would send 30 disciples in, but only 1 or 2 would come back alive. Some unlucky ones might not even make it back alive. That would be a huge loss. But those disciples who could come back alive and make great contributions to the sect would not have to worry about living for the rest of their lives. Then again, if there was a heavy reward, there would definitely be brave men. If there was no heavy reward, who would risk their lives? After more than half a day, the hundreds of thousands of people had finally entered. Instead, tens of thousands of elders from various sects had gathered in the sky. They were all nervously staring at the scene below. They would be waiting here for a month, and their respective stalls would be their lodgings. 1 month later, whether the sect would be happy or sad would depend on whether their disciples lived up to expectations. Those who lived up to expectations would be able to display many rare items in their own stalls to sell, while the unlucky ones would either have to spend money to buy things or pack up and leave. The Four Links Chamber of Commerce was the last to arrive. When the people from the various sects and chambers of commerce had all left, they walked up to the golden-robed guards for inspection. Many people in the sky felt strange looking at this group of people. There were only 31 people in total, and 2 of them clearly had cultivation that exceeded the limit, while the last one's cultivation couldn't be seen through. Excluding these 3 people, there were only 28 people participating. For this kind of thing, everyone hoped that the more people that went in, the better it would be. Perhaps the extra person that came out would be able to collect precious items worth hundreds of millions or even hundreds of billions of divine-grade spirit stones. At the very least, the more people that went in, the more likely there would be 1 more person that would come back alive, and at least bring something out. No one had ever seen such a situation before, and they couldn't figure out what the Four Links Chamber of Commerce was up to. Some people who had dealings with the Four Links Chamber of Commerce knew the predicament they were in, shaking their heads and sighing. As for Qi Fengsheng, who had a deep understanding of the Four Links Chamber of Commerce, he was sneering at the side. Wan Ling and the 3 elders exchanged a glance, noticing that Yu Qianqiu was standing at the end of the group, walking at the back of the group in a well-behaved manner. However, his head kept darting left and right, as if he was curious about everything. It was not easy for someone like him to be able to stand at the end of a group of several 100,000 people. Being the only one among several 100,000 people was quite eye-catching. However, the most eye-catching thing was yet to come. 2 golden-robed guards suddenly raised their hands and shouted, "Stop right there. You're not allowed to go in," cutting off Yu Qianqiu's little tail from the outside. Everyone's gazes were fixed on him. Yu Qianqiu was isolated outside, dumbfounded as he looked around. Facing the group of golden-robed guards that were glaring at him like tigers watching their prey, he swallowed hard and said, "Why, if they can go in, why can't I go in?" One of the golden-robed guards snorted coldly, "There's no why. Leave now." Mu Bing hurried over with Nan Tianlong, bowing and explaining, "You may have misunderstood. His cultivation is only at the soul formation stage. He's only like this because he took an immortal pill that conceals his cultivation. That's your business. There's no need to explain it to me. The golden-robed guard shouted, "Leave now, or you'll be killed." Mu Bing couldn't hold back after hearing such harsh words. Mu Tianjiao, who had already passed the inspection, quickly ran back. She bowed to the golden-robed guard and begged, "Big brother, please do me a favor. He really is only at the soul formation stage. You can check him." Commander Wu Xiong, who was standing at the entrance of the cave, had no interest in this kind of thing. His subordinates naturally had their reasons for doing this, but when his gaze landed on Mu Tianjiao, he paused slightly. In a flash, he teleported to their side and asked indifferently, "What's going on?" After the group of people bowed, both sides explained the reason. Wu Xiong glanced at the small group of people and was somewhat curious. He stared at Mu Tianjiao and asked, "Why are there fewer people?" Mu Tianjiao immediately bowed and said, "Reporting to Commander, our Chamber of Commerce is in a difficult time. We really can't gather enough people. Other than my daughter, they were all recruited by our Chamber of Commerce. We're already very lucky to be able to recruit so many people." Wu Xiong had been in the celestial world for so many years, so of course he knew about ups and downs. He could roughly guess what was going on. He asked indifferently, "You want to enter the divine ruin realm yourself?" "Yes." Mu Tianjiao replied respectfully. "We really don't have enough people." Wu Xiong didn't ask any more questions. He made an exception and put his hand on Yu Qianzhou's shoulder. He discovered that Yu Qianzhou's body was indeed filled with white true essence, not golden celestial essence. He didn't say the result himself. He said indifferently to the two guards, "Check his cultivation." "Yes." The two guards responded and immediately put a hand on Yu Qianzhou's shoulder. Then they withdrew their hands and replied, "Late-stage soul formation cultivation." Wu Xiong nodded and said, "Late-stage soul formation cultivation entering the divine ruin realm isn't against the rules, right?" One of them immediately reported, "Since it's been confirmed, it's not against the rules." Without another word, Wu Xiong waved his hand and said, "Let them pass." At the same time, he disappeared in a flash, not even giving Mu Tianjiao and the others a chance to thank him. After some twists and turns, under Mu Tianjiao's lead, the group of 28 people finally entered the divine ruin realm. Wan Ling and the three elders looked at each other speechlessly after witnessing this scene. They didn't expect that Yu Qianzhou had really taken an immortal pill to conceal his cultivation. What they didn't expect even more was that Yu Qianzhou would actually enter such a dangerous place like the divine ruin realm. The mystery of buying 100 sets of illustrations made them even more confused. Could it be to bring them into the divine ruin realm for comparison? But they didn't even have 30 people, so what did they need 100 sets for? As soon as Yu Qianzhou and the others entered the circling white light, they immediately felt as if they were in a starry sky. There were colorful streams of light flying around them, and there was a huge suction force in front of them that made them involuntarily pass through. In just a few moments, everyone felt their eyes light up. A huge force spat them out from the darkness of the flowing light. As soon as they stood firm, they immediately found that the exit was also a cave, and there was also a rotating white light behind them. This was also the entrance to go back. After a month, it would automatically disappear, and they could go back at any time within a month. However, once they went out, they would lose the chance to come back. The people of the Immortal Palace would not let them in again. However, no one would go back before the time limit was up. The consequences of going out midway were very serious. The sects would never be lenient to people who were afraid of death and brought shame to their sections. Of course, if they brought back a great treasure, that was another matter. Because that was called protecting a treasure meritorious. Everyone had already taken out their own treasures and walked out vigilantly. Yu Qianzhou walked out empty-handed. His treasures could appear at any time, so it was easier to use them empty-handed. As soon as everyone walked out of the cave, they were immediately shocked. What they saw was a bloody scene of corpses strewn all over the ground. Chapter 809. As far as the eye could see, everything was dark and gloomy. as if it was raining and the sun couldn't be seen. The naked eye couldn't see very far, only a few hundred meters away. However, within this area, there were broken limbs and intestines spilling out. The blood on the ground had yet to coagulate and was still flowing slowly. It was obvious that the fierce battle was about to end. Countless people had died with their eyes wide open. Roughly estimating, thousands of people had died within this area of a few hundred meters. No wonder it was said that the fight for treasures was the most intense when they first entered. Often, because of the appearance of a single immortal herb, everyone would gather and fight over it. The hazy mist was obviously condensed from spiritual energy. Just breathing it in was enough to refresh one's mind, but the thick smell of blood in the air made it hard for people to breathe freely. The group was glad that they were the last to enter. Although they might have lost the chance to obtain the precious treasure, they had avoided heavy casualties. Everyone here had seen the world, and death was a common occurrence. The tragic scene in front of them shocked them, but there was nothing to be afraid of. Mu Tianjiao's beautiful hair had long been tied into a tight knot. In one hand, she held a small silver-white shield engraved with various patterns of flowers. In the other, she held a sword. Judging from the gleaming luster on the sword, they were no ordinary items. It's best that we don't split up. However, in case we get separated by an accident, everyone must remember the way back. After Mu Tianjiao's sincere explanation, a resolute expression flashed across her face as she warned, "But I'll say the ugly words first. According to the previous agreement, if you withdraw without obtaining any valuable treasures, Si Tong will not pay a single spirit stone." No one said anything. Most of them were vigilant of their surroundings. Yu Qianshou tilted his head and rummaged through a pile of jade archives and illustrations from his storage pouch. After arranging them in a convenient order, he put them back into his storage pouch. He kept 2 of the immortal herbs in his hand, ready to compare them with the real thing. He had no choice. Unlike everyone else, they were all natives of the immortal realm. Even if they hadn't seen many things before, they had at least heard of them. With one look, they could tell what they should pick and what they shouldn't. However, when they saw that he didn't take out any transcendent artifacts, but instead took out 2 jade archives, they became curious. Only Tao Zhong turned his head to the side speechlessly. "You're a second-generation rich kid. What are you doing here? Is this a place for you to play?" Mu Tianjiao asked suspiciously. "Yu Qianshou, don't you have any Dharma treasures?" Yu Qianshou raised his head and let out an "ah." When he came back to his senses, he casually took out a flying sword from his sleeve. With a flash of cold light, it went back into his sleeve. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. They were all interested in his sleeve and couldn't help but take a few more glances. Seeing that he was prepared, Mu Tianjiao nodded slightly, waved the shield in her hand, and said, "Let's go." The group flew up lightly, passing by the bloody corpses, not daring to fly too high. After flying out of this wretched land of intense slaughter, he landed on the ground and walked again. Because everyone was here to look for treasures, the line of sight here was not good. If they flew too high, they would definitely miss something. While everyone was vigilant of their surroundings, they were also searching for something. Yu Qianshou could be said to be the most proactive one. He held 2 jade archives in his hands, his eyes darting around as he ran at the very front. If he found any suspicious plants, he would immediately take out the jade archives and quickly compare them. The others could not understand what he was doing, but Mu Tianjiao was a little touched by his initiative. Tao Zhong was the only one who scolded him in his heart. A second-generation rich kid. Their surroundings were always covered in fog formed by dense spiritual energy. If they were to cultivate here, they might even be able to save on spirit stones. Yu Qianshou was even wondering if he should bring the Utopia army here for training. Perhaps it was because they were shrouded in spirit fog for a long period of time and never saw sunlight, but the plants in the ruins of God looked a little strange. They were mostly different from the plants commonly seen outside. This brought great trouble to Yu Qianshou's search. He could barely walk far, and he would have to stop for a moment when he encountered a strange plant. However, the benefits it brought were also great. It did not take long for him to be able to eliminate some things without looking at the jade archives. The entire terrain of the ruins of God seemed to be made up of hills. Tall mountains were rarely seen, perhaps because they had not yet ventured deep into the ruins. It was also probably related to the lack of sunlight. There were very few tall trees in the surroundings. This was a good thing for the treasure hunters, as they did not have as much cover. Along the way, they occasionally saw traces of fighting. There were ferocious beasts that had been killed, as well as the corpses of those who had been killed in battle. The storage bags and storage bracelets on their bodies were nowhere to be seen. It was obvious that they had been taken by their opponents. After hundreds of thousands of people swept through the area, it was indeed very safe. Even the wild beasts were probably scared out of their wits, let alone the ferocious beasts. Although Yu Qianqiu and the others were the last to enter, they did not come out empty-handed. They found quite a number of immortal herbs along the way. Although they were not very valuable, they would pick them as long as they passed by. Because the reward given by the four-way sect was 1/10 of the estimated value of the items they found, every item they collected was equivalent to an additional reward. This made Yu Qianqiu admire Mu Tianjiao's methods. She made everyone feel like they were shareholders in his previous life, working hard with the mentality that the more they earned, the more they would get. However, Yu Qianqiu was not interested in this small amount of money. He couldn't even be bothered to look at the low-grade jade archives, with the highest value being one divine-grade spirit stone. In his hand were mid-grade and high-grade jade archives with the lowest value of one divine-grade spirit stone, with the highest value reaching hundreds of billions of divine-grade spirit stones. Currently, everyone was still in the outer region of the ruins of God. It would be very difficult for Huang Xiaolong to find mid-grade and high-grade immortal herbs. Everyone had more or less harvested their harvest, but he did not even touch a single stalk. Not to mention Mu Tianjiao, even everyone else was a little unhappy. Because once they went out, he, Yu Qianqiu, would have to take a share of everyone's hard-earned harvest. How could he just split the money and not do any work? Who knew that before everyone could complain, Yu Qianqiu would be the first to do so? He who was walking at the front suddenly stopped, turning around and shouting at the crowd, "Following behind others like this is not a solution, ah. There really isn't anything valuable here. Even if there was, it would have been swept clean by the hundreds of thousands of people ahead of us. Why don't we just fly forward, go deeper inside and make a fortune? What do you guys think?" Everyone exchanged a look, hesitating. Going deeper inside was indeed possible, but there were definitely too many people here. Even if they came across something good, they would have to fight to snatch it. The risk was too high. If they dragged on for another day or two, many people would die, and the danger would be greatly reduced. At that time, it wouldn't be too late to plot again. Mu Tianjiao pondered in silence. In truth, her thoughts were more or less the same as everyone else. She indeed wanted to drag on for another day or two. Seeing that no one spoke, Yu Qianqiu waved his arm, shouting, "What's there to be afraid of? The timid will starve to death, the bold will die from overeating. It's impossible to make a fortune without taking risks. Everyone, be straightforward, are we going or not?" Someone couldn't stand it, mistaking him for someone slacking off and mocking, "Since you don't work and keep wandering around, why don't you go deeper and explore the situation first?" Mu Tianjiao still wanted to stop them, telling everyone not to cause trouble that was detrimental to unity. Unexpectedly, Yu Qianqiu slapped his thigh and laughed. "Good idea, you guys take your time to search, I'll go scout out the situation first, then come back to look for you guys. It's settled then." With that said, he disappeared into the spirit fog with a whoosh. Mu Tianjiao wanted to stop him, but she didn't have time. The group of people were speechless, realizing that this guy was really bold, actually daring to go in alone. Yu Qianqiu flew inside quickly with a face full of excitement. He had long wanted to leave the group and act alone. Otherwise, if he encountered something good, it would be inconvenient to take it for himself, and if he was forced to kill his own people to snatch the treasure, how embarrassing would that be? Just as he was fantasizing that he had picked up a treasure worth hundreds of billions, suddenly, a sharp whistle cut through the air, and dozens of streams of light formed a matrix, sealing off his path forward and retreat, rapidly shooting towards him. If it was someone else who encountered this, they would probably be in danger, because they had lost the space to teleport through and dodge. F***ck. You're courting death. Yu Qianzhou was instantly enraged. He hadn't found anyone to fight since he came in, but someone actually ambushed him. It was really intolerable. With a wave of his arms, he used the metal incantation, and in an instant, dozens of flying swords that attacked him exploded into silver powder with a hum. At the same time that he attacked, Yu Qianzhou quickly passed through the silver powder that filled the air and shot in the direction of the attack. Along the way, he was afraid that the person who ambushed him would escape, so he disappeared with a teleport, directly appearing in the forest below. The 30 people lying in ambush in the forest were prepared to secretly attack and steal the treasure. Before entering the Divine Ruin Realm, they had already secretly trained in a group attack in the sect for a long time. This was the first time that they had found someone alone, and the first time they attacked as a group. Who knew that after the flying swords were released, they would suddenly lose contact with everyone? The 30 people were looking at each other in dismay when they suddenly realized that there was one more person among them, and they were immediately shocked. Before they could react, the other party had already shaken his arms and shouted angrily, "Star-absorbing great technique." Everyone only saw a burst of white smoke in front of them, and they instantly lost consciousness. F***ck. I am number 1 in the world below the immortal realm. How dare you sneak attack me, you must be tired of living. Yu Qianzhou cursed and crushed a skeleton, taking the storage bags from the waists of the 30 skeletons into his hands. Carrying a large pile of storage bags, his mood immediately became better. He leaned against a tree and happily checked the storage bags one by one, but the more he looked, the darker his face became. He didn't find anything valuable. After confiscating all the storage bags, he rushed out of the forest with a whoosh. He didn't know which sect the 30 skeletons on the ground belonged to, but they were all destroyed in the blink of an eye. He didn't know how the elders of the sect who were waiting outside the divine ruins would react when they found out, and he didn't know how the sect who had secretly trained them in a joint attack would react when they found out. Chapter 8:10. To Yu Qianzhou, killing these people did not burden him in the slightest. Entering this place to fight and kill was a matter of life and death. Success or failure was up to the heavens. Moreover, these people were the ones who made the first move. He had not flown far from the place where he had killed people when he faintly heard the sounds of an intense battle. It sounded like a group of people were fighting. Yu Qianzhou immediately slowed down and arrived outside a valley. He quietly floated close to the ground and hid behind a large boulder. He peeked his head out to take a look. By the time he saw what was happening, the intense battle was almost over. He saw with his own eyes one of the people being dismembered by a group of swords. There were other corpses scattered all over the valley. Another surrounded grey-robed man suddenly summoned something from his storage bangle. He grabbed it in his hand and shouted angrily, "Stop! Or I'll destroy it." The dozen or so blue-robed men surrounding him immediately hesitated. Their flying swords hovered in the air, glaring at the grey-robed man. However, none of them dared to make another move. After exchanging glances, one of them stepped forward and said with a cold smile, "Hand it over, and I promise to let you live." "Do you think I'll believe your bullshit?" the grey-robed man said with a face full of grief and indignation. The leader of the blue-robed men scoffed, "What do you want then? If you destroy the thing, you'll still die. Hand it over, and I promise to let you go." The grey-robed man shook his head in grief and indignation. He knew full well what would happen to him if he handed over the thing. However, as luck would have it, he happened to see a head peeping from behind a large boulder outside the valley. Needless to say, it was Yu Qianzhou. The grey-robed man immediately shouted at Yu Qianzhou, "Brother, if you can save my life, I'm willing to give you 1 yuan of the Tri-Element's divine fruit." "Damn it! Don't drag me down with you, you bastard!" Yu Qianzhou cursed under his breath and immediately retracted his head. However, he seemed to have heard the name, Tri-Element's divine fruit, somewhere before. He immediately took out the jade archive and checked it. The dozen or so blue-robed men looked over, but saw no one. The leader immediately laughed and said, do you think we're 3-year-olds? You're still trying to create a diversion at this point? I advise you to obediently hand over the item, and I promise to let you go. However, the gray-clothed man was unwilling to give up. He shouted again, brother, do you think it's too little? All right, as long as you can save my life, I'm willing to give you 2 essences of the 3 elements immortal fruit. If you can help me kill all of them and take revenge, I can give you all of the 3 elements immortal fruits. Yu Qianqiu, who was hiding behind the boulder, turned a deaf ear to him. He was waving his fists excitedly in the air. He had finally found the description of the 3 elements immortal fruit in the intermediate level illustrated handbook. This 3 elements immortal fruit was not simple. It had miraculous effects, and was one of the 3 main ingredients of the Immortal Ascension Pill. What was the Immortal Ascension Pill? When one's cultivation base reached the peak of late divine transformation stage, consuming this immortal pill would allow one's cultivation base to rise to early minor immortal stage. The Immortal Ascension Pill was just right for Yu Qianqiu. He was at the peak of the soul-severing final stage and was just a step away from breaking through to the minor immortal early stage. Don't underestimate this one step. Even in the immortal world, there were many people who couldn't take this step. Of course, reaching the early minor immortal stage didn't mean that one could forge an immortal physique. But as long as one's cultivation reached this level, forging an immortal physique wasn't a difficult task for people in the immortal world. All they needed to do was spend some money to borrow the passage from the immortal palace. Any one of the 72 passages from the immortal world to the mortal world would do. Even though the Immortal Ascension Pill was nothing to most cultivators in the immortal world, it was a priceless treasure for those who were stuck in the soul-severing stage for their entire lives. Especially those rich and powerful families in the immortal world, they would spend large sums of money to purchase it. One had to know that although the lifespan of a soul-severing cultivator was long, it wasn't immortality. Once one stepped into the immortal realm and forged an immortal physique, one would be able to live forever. Just imagine how tempting this was. Hence, the price of the Immortal Ascension Pill had always been high in the immortal world. One Immortal Ascension Pill could be sold for 1 billion divine-grade spirit stones, and it could be even higher. As for the main ingredient, the 3 elements immortal fruit, even if it wasn't refined into an immortal pill, it could still be sold for 300 million divine-grade spirit stones. How could Yu Qianqiu not be excited? The gray-robed man raising the price once again immediately attracted the attention of the group of blue-robed men. The leader of the group raised his chin at his fellow disciple, then turned to look at him in disappointment. The latter immediately dashed over. Hiding behind a boulder, Yu Qianqiu had just put away the jade archive and made up his mind to snatch the treasure when he raised his head and saw a blue-robed man appear in front of him. Before he could react, the flying sword in the blue-robed man's hand was already flying towards him. With a wave of his left hand, Yu Qianqiu smashed the flying sword into dust. His right hand formed a claw as he used the absorbing star's great art. The instant white smoke rose from the blue-robed man's body, Huang Xiaolong had already rushed over and smashed the blue-robed man into pieces. As the white smoke dissipated, Yu Qianqiu appeared. Standing at the valley's exit, he slowly turned around to face the group of blue-robed men. Such a shocking entrance method immediately shocked the group of blue-clothed people. They didn't see the scene of Yu Qianqiu smashing the flying sword behind the rock, but they saw the scene of their fellow disciple being smashed into pieces by the opponent's palm. His fellow disciple didn't even have the time to scream before he died. The group of blue-robed men looked at Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, but none of them could see through it. They exchanged looks and saw the fear in each other's eyes. The leader of the group even exclaimed, "You're an immortal expert. How did you enter the divine ruin realm?" Yu Qianqiu wanted this kind of shocking effect. Although the absorbing star's great art was powerful, he did not want to casually show it in front of outsiders. This was because this move was a trump card no matter where he went. It had to be used conservatively, so he still used it to confuse them. "You've got some guts. I didn't want to interfere in your matters, but you actually dared to attack me first. You're really tired of living." Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly as he slowly walked into the valley. The gray-robed man was overjoyed. He looked around, and while the others were not paying attention, he teleported behind Yu Qianzhou to hide. At this moment, the leader of the blue-robed men shouted, "Run!" He was the first to teleport far away into the air, and then quickly flew away. The others also ran away at almost the same time. Yu Qianzhou was startled. The distance was a little far. He wanted to get closer and use his qi to lock onto them, then use the absorbing star's great art to finish them all off, and strive to leave no one alive. Who would have thought that the other party would run away without even thinking? He had thought that his shocking entrance would scare them into not daring to move, but they still ran away. He was only at the soul formation stage, so it was impossible for him to catch up to them one by one. "Thank you for saving my life, Senior." The gray-robed man's voice sounded from behind him. Yu Qianzhou turned around and glared at him coldly. He was a little displeased. If it weren't for the fact that he was afraid of damaging the treasures in this guy's hands, he would have killed him a long time ago. The gray-robed man shuddered in the face of his cold gaze, and he offered the three-element divine fruits with both hands. "In order to thank Senior for saving my life, I am willing to offer all of the three-element divine fruits to you, Senior." On the tip of a foot-long, dark green sawtooth grass, 3 quail egg-sized, bright red fruits were growing. The fruits were faintly glowing with a thin layer of red light. A strange fragrance that could make one's heart melt slowly drifted out from the hands of the man in gray. Yu Qianzhou's eyes lit up. It was exactly the same as what was recorded in the handbook. He reached out to grab it, took a look, and sniffed it before stuffing it into his storage pouch. He then looked at the gray-robed man, who didn't dare to stand up straight, and asked, "You wouldn't give it to them even if you died, so why are you giving it to me?" The gray-robed man said respectfully, "They killed my fellow sect brothers, so I naturally can't give it to them. Besides, even if I give it to them, they won't let me go. Senior saved my life, so I am willing to give the treasures to Senior." He only said this to save his life. Otherwise, who would be willing to give up their treasures? Yu Qianzhou was naturally aware of this. He nodded and asked, "Which sect are you from?" The gray-robed man replied honestly, "Junior is Shui Mingqing, a disciple of the Skyward Palace." The Skyward Palace? Yu Qianzhou was stunned. The Skyward Palace, the #1 alchemy sect in the celestial realm? That's right. Shui Mingqing raised his head and said, "Could it be that Senior knows the elders of my sect?" Yu Qianzhou shook his head, but he put on a smiling expression and asked, "Since you're a disciple of the Skyward Palace, I'm sure you know a lot of alchemy recipes for refining immortal pills. For example, using this 3 elements immortal fruit to refine the immortal ascension pill." Although his expression became amiable, Shui Mingqing felt a chill down his spine. It was as if he had seen a dagger hidden in a smile. He immediately waved his hand and said, "Junior is just an external affairs disciple. Our sect's disciples haven't reached the celestial realm, so they don't have the chance to come into contact with alchemy. So Junior doesn't know any alchemy recipes." Yu Qianzhou snorted and said with a cold smile, "You're clearly lying to me. As a disciple of the Skyward Palace, how can you not know anything about alchemy?" Shui Mingqing hurriedly explained, "Senior may not know this, but before the cultivation of our Skyward Palace's disciples reaches the celestial realm, apart from cultivation, the main thing is to learn how to recognize various kinds of immortal herbs and be familiar with the medicinal properties of various immortal herbs and pills. Only after reaching the celestial realm will they have the opportunity to come into contact with the basic alchemy methods of refining immortal pills. As their cultivation increases, it's possible to come into contact with higher-level alchemy recipes. This rule of our sect is not a secret in the celestial realm, and many people know about it." "Senior, why?" He didn't finish his sentence, but Yu Qianzhou was not a fool. Naturally, he knew what he wanted to say, but now he believed that what he said was true. After a pause, his eyebrows suddenly moved as if he remembered something. He coughed and said, "Since you said you're familiar with the medicinal properties of various kinds of immortal herbs and pills, I'd like to test you. Do you know about the limit-breaking pill?" "Yes." Shui Mingqing replied confidently, "The limit-breaking pill is transparent white. Ordinary cultivators with spirit stones can increase their cultivation by 1 level every time they take one, and they can't increase anymore when they reach the end of the tribulation passing stage. There are actually two other colors of the limit-breaking pill, one is purple, and the other is red. Actually, both of them are poisonous pills. Chapter 8:11. Shui Mingqing spoke tirelessly, clearly explaining the pros and cons of the limit-breaking pill. His explanation was even clearer than Yu Qianzhou's understanding from the pill formula Jade Archive. He even thoroughly analyzed the medicinal principles of the limit-breaking pill. This greatly amazed Yu Qianzhou. The Skyward Palace was indeed worthy of being the leader of the industry in the immortal realm. It had already formed a fairly complete cultivation system. Its disciples had already laid a solid foundation before they even came into contact with alchemy. Once they officially started in the future, they would be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort. Sure enough, the methods accumulated over the years were not something that the cultivation sects in the mortal world could compare with. Then let me test you again. Is there any way to get rid of the toxins that have seeped into the body after taking the limit-breaking pill? Yu Qianzhou asked with a smile, his hands behind his back. He really did have the air of an old pedant testing his students. Shui Mingqing's face was filled with doubt. He did not know why this senior would ask such a simple question. Even if these questions were not known to everyone in the immortal realm, they were not secrets, were they? Yu Qianzhou urged with a smile, "It doesn't matter. Don't worry and say it boldly." Shui Mingqing paused for a moment, then continued to reply respectfully, "The toxins of the real limit-breaking pill are relatively mild. Generally, cultivators can rely on their own cultivation to self-regulate and eliminate the toxins within a month. But the limit-breaking pill is different. It is very harmful to the cultivator's body. The more they take, the more toxins will seep into their limbs, bones, and meridians. In severe cases, they will die suddenly, but in light cases, their cultivation will not progress. In fact, many people in the immortal realm use the limit-breaking pill to forcibly increase their cultivation. But for the famous sects, this method of spoiling things through excessive enthusiasm is generally not used. At first glance, it can quickly form a batch of power in a short period of time. But in the long run, even if the golden marrow cleansing pill is used to get rid of the toxins in the body, it will also cause congenital damage to the meridians in the limbs and bones, resulting in acquired deficiencies. This will bring great confusion to future cultivation. Since ancient times, almost none of the cultivators who have taken the limit-breaking pill have been able to increase their cultivation above the great immortal realm, unless there is another elixir to remedy it. So for the famous sects, they generally do not use methods like spoiling things through excessive enthusiasm like the limit-breaking pill. Because for them, they care more about long-term benefits. Only when there are more strong cultivators in the sect can the benefits of the sect last longer. That makes sense. Yu Qianzhou nodded slightly and asked, "The marrow-cleansing golden pill you mentioned is the thing that can remove the poison from the limit-breaking pill, right?" "Exactly." Shui Mingqing couldn't help but ask, "With senior's cultivation, you shouldn't need the marrow-washing golden pill, right? Senior, do you have someone who has taken the limit-breaking pill?" "Smart. To think that you would be able to guess that." Yu Qianzhou laughed out and pill and is it expensive? Shui Mingqing really wanted to take a closer look at what kind of person this person was. Why did he keep asking this question that everyone knew about? However, he did not dare to be presumptuous. After all, with this person's cultivation base, he could kill Shui Mingqing at any time. Thus, without any complaints, he replied obediently, "Actually, the demand is still very high because there are many people who have used pills similar to the restriction-breaking pill. However, in terms of unit price, whether it was high or not depended on who it was for. On average, each marrow-cleansing golden marrow pellet cost around 2,000 divine-grade spirit stones. It was a huge sum to the average person, but it was nothing to the big sects and families. In fact, the golden marrow cleansing pellets cost price wasn't high at all. The main reason why it could be sold for 2,000 divine-grade spirit stones was because of the high demand, not to mention that immortal herbs had a certain growth cycle. No matter how common an immortal herb was, it couldn't be as common as weeds. It wasn't worth it to use other treasures to grow it. This explanation was very detailed. Yu Qianqiu looked at the other person in admiration, but he was calculating in his heart. There were close to 10,000 people in Utopia's army. Including some people who did odd jobs, there were more than 10,000 people. These were all his subordinates, and he could not leave them alone. Moreover, when he came to the immortal world to conquer the world, it was more reassuring to use his own people. After all, he had spent a lot of effort to train them day by day. 10,000 marrow-cleansing golden marrow pellets were only 20 million divine-grade spirit stones. He could still afford this amount of money. Even if he could not afford it, he had to think of a way to do so. From the time he sat on the flying shuttle to look at the vast immortal world, to the gathering of heroes outside the ruins of God, his blood was already boiling. A very grand idea was born in his heart. It was too boring for those cultivators in the cultivation world to fight over such a small territory in the human world. As the #1 expert in the human world, he had the responsibility and obligation to bring everyone out to see the world. If everyone had the ability to follow my orders, then follow me to the immortal world to fight for it. From that moment on, he had the intention to use Utopia as the core and establish the cultivation world in the human world as his headquarters. Then, he would bring everyone to the immortal world to develop. He believed that those experts who were famous in the human world were not petty people. Once they went to the immortal world and saw the world, they would not be interested in the benefits of the human world. Not to mention forging an immortal body, just the spirit stones here could be counted as divine grade. Who would still want to disturb the secular world? In this way, his wish to separate the cultivation world from the secular world would naturally come true. Yu Qianqiu pondered for a moment and suddenly asked, "Just now, you said that there are pills similar to the limit-breaking pill. Then, are there pills that can raise one's cultivation from the tribulation passing stage to the soul formation late stage?" "Yes." Shui Mingqing said with certainty. It is said that as long as the main ingredient for refining the limit-breaking pill remains the same and a few other immortal herbs are added, it can be refined into the limit-breaking pill. But the side effect of this pill is that the toxicity is too strong. Once you break through to the soul formation late stage and don't take the marrow-cleansing golden pill in time, you will immediately die. Even so, you must break through to the small immortal stage within 3 months and forge an immortal body. Otherwise, your body will gradually weaken and you will quickly age and die within 3 months. The toxicity is so strong? Yu Qianqiu was shocked and asked, "Are you sure you didn't make a mistake?" Shui Mingqing raised his head and looked at him seriously and said, "Senior, you can ask others. There should be many people in the immortal world who know about this. But generally, no one will take the limit-breaking pill. It should be known that it is impossible to break through from the soul formation late stage to the small immortal stage within 3 months. Only those who have the immortal ascension pill would dare to do so. But one immortal ascension pill is worth 1 billion divine-grade spirit stones. It is not a small amount for ordinary sections. Using this method to raise one's cultivation level is simply using a huge amount of spirit stones. Not many people can afford it. Plus, using the limit-breaking pill to raise one's cultivation level has a huge impact on the future, so very few people use it. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Putting everything else aside, one immortal ascension pill was worth 1 billion divine-grade spirit stones. If he raised the cultivation level of all the people in Utopia to the small immortal stage, it would be an astronomical figure. Even the wealthy immortal palace would not be able to afford it. After a moment of shock, he calmed down. As long as he could find the various immortal herbs to refine the pill in the ruins of God, with the help of the purple chaos in Utopia, it would not be a problem to cultivate a large number of immortal herbs. The real problem was in the refining. With the pill refining recipe he could make a living in the mortal world, but it was obviously not good enough in the immortal world. But then again, as long as he could control a large number of rare immortal herbs, he would not have to worry about not being able to earn money in the immortal world. At the same time, he would not have to spend so much money. The most important problem now was to find the rare immortal herbs to cultivate, and then the problem of refining. As for finding rare spirit herbs, he had planned to do so before entering the ruins of God, but to find someone to refine the pill. Yu Qianqiu pinched his chin and looked at Shui Mingqing greedily. He had already set his sights on the #1 alchemist sect in the immortal world, Skyward Palace. Looking at the clothes of the corpses scattered in the valley, Yu Qianqiu sighed meaningfully. It seems that among the 30 people from Skyward Palace who came in, you are the only one who is lucky enough to be alive. What are your plans for the future? Shui Mingqing's face darkened when he heard this. He slowly shook his head and said, if I can find a valuable treasure and return, it will be a great contribution. If I go back empty-handed, I'm afraid my cultivation will come to an end. Yu Qianqiu suddenly chuckled and said, even if you have a valuable treasure in your hands, do you think you can leave the ruins of God by yourself? I'm afraid there are already people lying in ambush at the exit of the ruins of God, waiting for a lone person like you to walk right into the trap. Shui Mingqing was immediately stunned on the spot. After a moment of absent-mindedness, he suddenly raised his head and bowed. Senior's cultivation is profound. Please show me a way out. He was not stupid. After he reacted, he immediately guessed that Yu Qianqiu must have a purpose for saying this. Otherwise, with the other party's cultivation, there was no need for him to pay attention to him. Talking to smart people is really enjoyable. You understand with just a hint. Yu Qianqiu scanned the entire valley and said slowly, I won't hide it from you. After we go out, I will have to deal with your sect. When the time comes, you can introduce me to them. Secondly, you will follow me for this month. When we go out together a month later, I will give you a rare treasure that you can take out so that you can explain to your sect. Of course, during this month, you will also have to display your specialty and help me lead the team to find all kinds of rare immortal herbs. What do you think? Shui Mingqing was overjoyed. With the other party's ability, it should not be a problem to protect him. Moreover, there was no need for the other party to lie to him. He was such a burden in this dangerous area. He immediately bowed and said, Junior will follow Senior's arrangements. As he said this, he looked around and was stunned. Senior wants me to lead the team? May I know where Senior's men are? Chapter 8:12. Yu Qianqiu laughed and walked over to pat him on the shoulder. He seemed to have found the feeling when a mortal crocodile patted him. Then he said, Don't worry, it won't be long before a large number of experts will come to command you. I guarantee that you'll have a good time in the divine ruin realm. Shui Mingqing was shocked by his pat and nodded with an awkward smile. I'll follow Senior's arrangements, Senior's arrangements. Yu Qianqiu looked around and pointed to the valley. Find a place to hide in this valley first. Wait for me for a day or two. I'll come find you then. A day or two? Shui Mingqing immediately said with a bitter face, Senior, there are no good places to hide in this valley. I'm afraid I won't be able to hold on for a day or two before I'm discovered. I see. Yu Qianqiu was startled. He waved his hand and said, It's okay, I'll give you a safe place to hide. Just as he waved his hand, the ground surged and the two of them went straight underground. Shui Mingqing looked around in surprise and said blankly, Earth manipulation technique. The layer of soil above their heads healed and the light disappeared instantly. The two of them were still sinking until they reached a depth of about 100 meters underground. Yu Qianqiu learned from Huang Tian that day and scattered a large pile of fluorite. The surrounding layer of soil was inlaid with fluorite and retreated. In a short while, a spacious underground room was formed with tables and chairs. Although Shui Mingqing knew of the earth manipulation technique, it was still the first time he witnessed such a magical scene. His eyes couldn't help but shine as he cupped his hands and praised, Senior's methods are indeed extraordinary. Junior is impressed. Stop flattering me and don't run around. Wait for me to come back. Yu Qianqiu dove into the soil and disappeared. The cornucopia of the world commerce had lost its former prosperity. Although the ruins had been cleaned up, it would still take time for the cornucopia to recover its former vitality. The half-collapsed god of wealth peak became steeper and steeper. The protective formation that had been broken back then could no longer be set up because of Ian Baikong's death. Even if it could be set up, it would certainly not be as powerful as the one Ian Baikong had set up. World Chamber of Commerce no longer had such a capable person. Yu Qianqiu stood quietly at the edge of the cliff outside the cornucopia. The suspension bridge leading to the cornucopia was right in front of him. It had lost its usual sense of mystery. The cornucopia was no longer shrouded by clouds and mist, and the situation inside was clear at a glance. Even the Hall of Wealth on the God of Wealth Peak could be seen clearly. Yu Qianqiu sighed softly. Without Ian Baikong, the World Commerce Association lacked a little flavor. Ian Baikong's courage that day when he was on the brink of death and didn't even care about the afterlife was indeed admirable. Even after thousands of years, if the World Chamber of Commerce still existed, then no one would be able to avoid Ian Baikong, the founder of the World Chamber of Commerce. He could be considered to have died a worthy death, preserving his prestige for a lifetime. Two cultivators came together. It was unknown which sect they were from, but they were about to cross the bridge and enter the treasure basin. Suddenly, they noticed a person standing at the bridgehead, blocking their way. One of them immediately shouted, "Friend, please stand to the side. Don't block the way." Yu Qianqiu slowly turned his head and looked at the two indifferently. With a flash, he turned into an afterimage and directly shot towards the God of Wealth Peak. The person who shouted immediately clicked his tongue and said, "Look at this speed, his cultivation is really extraordinary. I wonder where he came from. Let's go. Why are you in a daze?" He pulled the other person. The latter slowly looked at him and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Do you know who you shouted at just now? He's already gone. Who cares who he is? Don't tell me it's the world's #1 expert, Yu Qianqiu. Let's go." That person laughed. The other person immediately gave him a thumbs up and said, "You guessed it right. He's Yu Qianqiu." The former's face froze. He was stunned on the spot and couldn't laugh anymore. The butcher of the cultivation world in the past, the current punishment master of the demon region, and the world's #1 expert, Yu Qianqiu. This person is not a kind person. He's famous for being cruel and merciless. God knows how many people have died in his hands. 4 of the world's top 10 experts have already died in his hands, and I actually asked him to make way. In the Hall of Wealth Reverence, Sikong Ju and Jing Yuankong were gathered together, working together to discuss the plan to revive the World Commerce Chamber. Suddenly, they saw a figure land outside. With his back facing the two of them, he slowly stood under the pine tree with his hands behind his back. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, the two of them wouldn't have realized that someone had arrived. They were instantly shocked. This person's cultivation is so high. The two of them came out in a flash. Sikong Ju stared at the person's back and said in a deep voice, "May I know which expert has graced my cornucopia with his presence? Back then, your master often stood here to watch the clouds gather and disperse, and the world change. Back then, I didn't understand what was so interesting about it, but now I understand. This kind of behavior will slowly cultivate one's character and make one's heart as broad as the heavens and earth. That's why your master self-destructed. If it was fatty pay, even if there was the slightest hope, he would still compromise and live on. This is the difference between people. Some people's arrogance is not on the surface, but in their bones. Your master is this kind of person, which is why he can prop up such a huge world commerce chamber. This is courage, something you two brothers should learn from." Yu Qianqiu slowly turned around and looked at the two of them with a smile. "Yu Qianqiu." The two of them cried out in unison. Then, as if remembering something, the two of them looked at each other and immediately cupped their hands. "Greetings, torture envoy." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand, indicating that there was no need to be so polite. He asked with a smile, "How is it? Is the World Commerce Chamber all right? No one has any designs on the World Commerce Chamber, right?" Sikong Ju immediately took a step forward and answered, "Senior Bai has spoken, and the torture envoy has shaken the world, so no one dares to have any designs on the World Commerce Chamber. These words had already expressed their attitude, set their position, and made it clear that the World Commerce Chamber was a part of the demon domain. Although they said this, their hearts were pounding. They didn't know why Yu Qianqiu would suddenly come to God of Wealth Peak. Was he really going to reach out to the World Commerce Chamber? Hee hee. Don't be so courteous. I'm here to ask for your help. Yu Qianqiu said bluntly, the World Commerce Chamber's contact network is spread across all the countries. I want you to help me spread a message. Tell all the soul formation experts in the world that the great formation sealing the Holy East lands has been broken, and the trapped experts from the immortal and netherworld have already returned. Within 2 days, I want all the soul formation experts in the world to gather in the Holy East lands. At that time, I have an important announcement. Those who can't get there within 2 days will bear the consequences. Holy East lands. Sikongju and Jing Yuankong were stunned by this news. As Nongzhu knew that this matter was of great importance, she didn't let Nanming Patriarch divulge the news, so everyone didn't know about this news in a short period of time. From Yu Qianqiu's words, the two of them couldn't help but think of the rumors from a while ago. It was said that a large number of mysterious experts had suddenly passed through the skies of China's cultivation world. Seeing that the two of them were still in a daze, Yu Qianqiu frowned and asked indifferently, "Can you help me spread the news as quickly as possible?" The two of them suddenly came back to their senses and expressed that there was no problem. After a slight pause, Sikongju asked softly, "All the soul formation cultivators are going. Then, are we going to go as well?" Yu Qianqiu stared at the two of them and said in a low voice, "You two can discuss it among yourselves. Just one of you will go. After all, the World Chamber of Commerce is such a big business and it needs someone to take charge. If one of you comes, go and experience it. It will be beneficial to the development of the World Chamber of Commerce. Also, Xian Island has been destroyed, so there's no need to inform Nanming Patriarch and Nongzhu. The other soul formation experts must be informed. It's up to them whether they want to come or not. Let them decide for themselves." The reason why he didn't want to inform Nongzhu and Nanming Patriarch was mainly because he was worried that those women wouldn't have anyone to protect them. After all, Yan Zhuixing's matter hadn't been completely settled and he didn't know what would happen in the future. After receiving the news, Bing Qingzi's disciples had also disappeared. He ordered Gu Qingyun and Hong Qi to send people to secretly search for them, but there was still no news until now. He didn't know where they were hiding. Because of this, he didn't dare to relax his protection of those women. Although Yan Zhuixing's matter hadn't been completely settled and it made him feel uncomfortable, he didn't have the time to play hide and seek with Yan Zhuixing. He wouldn't give up eating for fear of choking because of Yan Zhuixing. He still had to do what he needed to do. The two of them looked at each other and Sikongju nodded. "We'll go and arrange it now." Yu Qianqiu didn't say much and disappeared on the spot. The two of them looked at each other and Sikongju nodded. "We'll go and arrange it now." Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything else and disappeared on the spot. The two of them were stunned once again. Yu Qianqiu, who had returned to Utopia, immediately found a remote place. He cast the earth mantra and sank several hundred meters underground. Another pile of fluorite was scattered out, and the surrounding soil, which was embedded with fluorite, retreated. In the blink of an eye, a grand underground palace was formed. However, this underground palace wasn't like before. The decorations in the surroundings were arranged in picturesque disorder. Standing in it would give people a feeling of being in a mysterious formation. After spending half a day and putting in a lot of effort to carve the underground palace to make it more mysterious, he nodded in satisfaction and silently memorized the layout before disappearing on the spot. When he appeared again, he appeared in the underground palace where he had met the underworld saintess. He released his divine sense and scanned the surroundings. After confirming that there was no one around, he waved his hand and pointed at the ground. The dark stone floor melted, and the soil underground also melted. He slowly walked down, and a slanted underground tunnel formed. When he was nearly 100 meters down, he scattered another pile of fluorite and executed the earth art. Soon, a magnificent underground palace that was exactly the same as the one under Utopia was formed. Looking around the underground palace, a smile appeared on his lips. The reason why he put in so much effort was because he couldn't always fool others like how he had fooled a mortal crocodile. That method could fool one or two people, but it would be unbearable to fool a large group of people. Now that he had created two identical places, he wouldn't have to be afraid even if he was in Utopia. Chapter 8:13. In the sky above the vast East Sea, more than 300 soul formation experts gathered in a group and quickly flew toward the East Holy Land. The lineup was huge and spectacular, rarely seen in the cultivation world. They were led by Nongzhu, Wen Lanfeng, Li Duxing, and Hu Changshou, the three experts at the last stage of transforming spirit realm. They were also the only few experts at the last stage of transforming spirit realm in the cultivation world except for Yu Qianshou. Most of the other soul formation experts had died in the hands of the previous torturers of the demon ghost region. The hundreds of people behind them were mostly lords in the middle stage of the soul formation realm. There were also some in the early stage like Sikong Ju. Lu Yanqing was also in this group. There was no other way, she was also a soul formation expert. Who would dare to disobey the order of the demon ghost region's torturer? The death of Pei Fong and the others was a warning. At this time, Lu Yanqing was no longer wearing the gauze hat she wore when she went out. Her short hair was wrapped in a piece of gauze, and her expression was neither happy nor sad. The appearance of her stunning appearance should have attracted everyone's attention, but everyone's expressions were grave. No one could be satisfied with her at this time. Looking down at the surging waves of the ocean below, everyone's emotions were fluctuating like the ocean. Right now, the opening of the East Holy Land wasn't the thing they were most concerned about. What they were most worried about was something else, the appointment at the East Sea again. The soul formation experts' hearts trembled at the thought of this word. The previous torturer of the demon ghost region, Bai Changchun, had invited everyone to the East Sea to show off his power. He had ruthlessly slaughtered several people and intimidated the entire cultivation world. Now, the new torturer of the demon ghost region had come to the East Sea again. Oh my God! What did Yu Qianshou want to do? Did he want to ruthlessly show off his power like his master? Was the death of Pei Fong, Ouyangde, Qi Zhoujuan, and Bing Qingzi not enough? When the group received the order from the World Chamber of Commerce, they were all dumbfounded. They hurriedly used the communication array to contact each other, only to find that everyone had received a terrible invitation. Actually, no one wanted to go, but no one dared to say no. Yu Qianshou's vicious and merciless methods were well known. In the end, a group of people came up with a good idea. All of them gathered in the purple bamboo forest in the South Sea and begged Nongzhu to speak for them at the critical moment, because Nongzhu had a good relationship with the two torture envoys of the demon ghost region. Nongzhu and ancestor Nanming didn't know that Yu Qianshou had summoned all the deification realm experts in the world to gather in the East Holy Land. Seeing this group of people coming together, Nongzhu almost jumped in fright, thinking that this group of people wanted to join hands to deal with her. When he figured out what was going on, he also thought that Yu Qianshou was trying to copy old Bai Liwei. Even the place he picked was so similar. Since Yu Qianshou wanted to make a move, it wasn't appropriate for him to interfere. He didn't want to come. However, he could not resist everyone's pleading. Moreover, seeing that Wen Lanfeng, Lu Yanqing, and the others had also received an invitation, he could no longer ignore it. So he left ancestor Nanming to look after the house and rushed over with a group of people. Above the undulating blue sea, the group of people all stopped at the place where there was supposed to be called Xian Island. They looked around, but there was no trace of Xian Island. Looking ahead again, the East Holy Land, which had been covered by the white fog for many years, finally unveiled its mysterious veil. Everyone looked ahead in a daze. No matter whether they believed it or not, that mysterious land was in front of them. Nongzhu looked back at the crowd and said with a wry smile, "Since everyone is here, let's go and have a look together." Then she took the lead and flew over, followed by a group of people. As soon as they arrived in the sky above the East Holy Land, they couldn't help looking around, but they didn't find how dangerous this legendary place was. It seemed to be no different from the land on the other side of the sea. They looked around but didn't find Yu Qianzhou's figure there. Li Duxing's eyes flashed, and his only arm pointed to a towering stele not far away. It stood in front of them like a tower and was very conspicuous. Nongzhu led a group of people to fly over again. There was a big arrow on the stele, and there were words beside it, "Go straight in the direction of the arrow. I'll wait for you in front. Come as soon as possible and destroy the stele after you've seen it." Yu Qianzhou. The group of people looked at each other and then at each other. They didn't know what Yu Qianzhou was doing. It didn't look like he was going to use them to show his power. The arrowhead pointed to the east. Nongzhu struck out a fierce gang wind with one palm. With a loud bang, the earth's stele disintegrated instantly. Then she waved her hand and said, "Let's go. Let's go and see what that guy is doing." The group of people quickly flew toward the east. The mountains and rivers below passed quickly under their eyes, and they were amazed by the occasional glimpse of the indigenous tribes. On the way, they occasionally saw cities and secular people bustling on the streets of the cities. They couldn't believe that this was the legendary dangerous Holy Land of East. They flew for a whole day, but still didn't see Yu Qianzhou's figure. They all suspected that they had bumped into Yu Qianzhou. But they had been flying east according to the direction of Yu Qianzhou's arrow. They didn't change their direction. Just as everyone was flying above a vast primeval forest, in the midst of a mountain range, a shout suddenly came from below, "Stop flying, here, it's right here." Hearing that, they stopped and looked down. They vaguely saw Yu Qianzhou waving to them on the top of a towering hill. He shouted, come down, don't dawdle. Come down, it's here. Let's go." Nongzhu seemed to have become the leader. With a shout, she led everyone to fly down together. When everyone floated in front of Yu Qianzhou couldn't help but be stunned when he saw Nongzhu. He said, "I didn't ask you to come, why are you here?" Nongzhu said unhappily, "You made such a big commotion, I had to come even if I didn't want to." As he said that, he turned to look at the people behind him. Many people turned their heads guiltily. They were the people who urged him to come. When Lanfeng subconsciously turned to look at Lu Yanqing and found that she was biting her lips and staring at Yu Qianzhou. Yu Qianzhou first counted everyone. Seeing that except for Nanming Ancestor and Jing Yuankong, everyone who should be here was here, he immediately waved his hand and said, "All right. Everyone, follow me." He flew towards a gloomy valley in the middle of the towering mountains. Nongzhu followed behind and shouted, "What on earth do you want to do by bringing us here?" When everyone landed in the gloomy call, they immediately found that there was a mountain gate on the side of the concave mountain wall. It was a dark mountain gate that led to an underground cave residence. They really couldn't see it from the top, so they had to stand in front of it. The stone-carved mountain gate was grand, simple, and elegant. There were strange patterns carved on it, and it was obvious that it was a very old thing. The underground cave residence behind the mountain gate was dark, and a gust of cold air was coming out from inside. Nongzhu looked at Yu Qianzhou, who was walking toward the mountain gate, and asked suspiciously, "What did you bring us here for? What is this place?" Standing on the steps of the mountain gate, Yu Qianzhou turned to look at everyone and explained with a smile, "This is a good place. Back then, there were immortals from the immortal world who were trapped in the East Holy Land. They ruled this continent and built an immortal city on the ground, but it was empty now. The other group of people who were trapped were the meditation cultivators from the underworld. They dug out an underground world under this mountain, and this is the entrance to the underground world. When the East Holy Land was broken, all the immortals and meditation cultivators went home, leaving behind this empty underworld." Everyone was shocked. Although Yu Qianzhou said that the people from the underworld had all left, they still couldn't help but feel a chill on their backs. They all looked at the entrance behind Yu Qianzhou in horror. The corner of Nongzhu's mouth twitched. "You called us here just to let us see this? Why? You don't like it?" Yu Qianzhou stood in the middle of the mountain gate and sneered, "Don't be fooled by the creepy atmosphere in here. Let me tell you, there is an amazing treasure hidden in here. Once you see it, I'm afraid I won't be able to chase you away." Although his words were pleasant to hear, everyone's face was filled with doubt. If there was really such a good treasure, why did you call us here? Nongzhu frowned and said in a low voice, "Yu Qianqiu, don't make fun of us. It's such a secret place, hidden in such a vast mountain range. How did you find this place? Damn it. Why did you come here and pretend to be a good person? You made it inconvenient for me to use violence." Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and said, "Did you forget that after the East Holy Land formation was broken, my master went back to Shantian Island?" Nongzhu was stunned. "Did Old Bai tell you the location before he went to the underworld?" Everyone was shocked again. Bai Changchun actually came out of the East Holy Land and went to the underworld. Nonsense. If my master didn't tell me, how could I find this place? Yu Qianqiu suddenly chuckled and said, "I won't hide it from you all. I found a shocking secret here. There's a teleportation formation here that leads to an abandoned immortal grass garden from the immortal world. I have already gone there once through the teleportation array, but it is too big and the immortal herbs are scattered in the mountains. I don't have enough manpower to search for them by myself. Plus, there are some ferocious beasts in there. Those who are not at the demigod realm can't handle them. So I thought of asking for your help. But don't worry, I won't let you work for nothing. Everyone will get a share of the immortal herbs." Everyone looked at each other. They were all skeptical of this statement. Nongzhu sneered and said, "Since there is a teleportation array here, why would those people from the immortal world and the underworld be trapped for so long? Who's afraid of a glib tongue?" Yu Qianqiu's expression turned serious and said, "The heaven and earth formation that seals the East Holy Land is no small matter. It was set up by the Thousand Swords demon monarch himself. As the name suggests, it can seal the heaven and earth. In the beginning, they didn't realize that the heaven and earth formation could isolate the teleportation function of the teleportation array. After it was built, they found out that it was useless. In the end, they left it and let us take advantage of it." Chapter 8:14. In the gloomy valley, over 300 soul-forming stage experts were silent. Contrasted with the surrounding environment, the atmosphere was a little strange. Ren Yu Qianqiu's words were earth-shattering, but everyone still maintained a skeptical attitude. What kind of people were there? They were people who had experienced the cruel survival of the fittest in the cultivation world. How could they be convinced by a few words when faced with such a mysterious matter? Everyone's eyes were fixed on the pitch-black entrance to the underworld. No one knew what was inside, but no matter how they looked at it, it was dangerous. Yu Qianqiu's gaze swept around. Seeing that everyone was suspicious and silent, he was instantly enraged. He snorted coldly, "Let me make this clear today. Those who are willing to come in and help me, we will be friends in the future. Those who are unwilling, we will be enemies in the future. You guys decide for yourselves." If Nongzhu had not come to join in the fun, he would not have been so polite. Now that he was too lazy to be long-winded, he directly made his threat. As soon as he finished speaking, he immediately turned around and walked inside. Yu Qianqiu's words were very obvious. Whether they lived or died, it was up to them. Everyone was dumbfounded. The corner of Nongzhu's mouth twitched. She cursed in her heart. Sure enough, a dog can't change its spots. He revealed his true nature in less than 3 sentences. "Yu Qianqiu!" Nongzhu shouted and stopped Yu Qianqiu in a flash. She frowned and said, "They didn't say that they wouldn't help you. But even I think it's too mysterious, let alone them. You have to let them think about it." Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and sneered, "Do you think I will harm you?" Nongzhu was stunned. After thinking about it, she realized that this brat would not harm her. After a pause, she said, "To be able to survive in the cultivation world to this day, who hasn't been careful, one step at a time." Before she could finish, Yu Qianqiu waved a jade archive in his hand and interrupted her. "I found this in the immortal herb garden. There are illustrations of various kinds of immortal herbs in it. Take a look. If you still don't believe me, then there's nothing I can do." You guys decide for yourselves. Nongju took it suspiciously and injected her divine sense into it to have a look. She was immediately attracted by all kinds of vivid and lifelike immortal herbs, which seemed to be swaying in front of her eyes. The rarest part was that there were various kinds of immortal herbs prices listed inside, easily going up to several 100 million divine-grade spirit stones. The detailed notes also indicated that this immortal herb was the main ingredient of a certain immortal pill. The things inside were just too shocking. The names of some elixirs seemed to have been heard of in legends. Nongju felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She withdrew her divine sense and stared at Yu Qianqiu in astonishment. Everyone looked at each other, wondering what Nongju had seen that made her look so lost. For a moment, everyone was curious and wanted to see what was inside. Suddenly, Nongju cried out involuntarily, "Are there really these things in there?" "Believe it or not, it's up to you." Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly. Lu Yanqing's lips quivered slightly. She had established herself in the cultivation world with her medical skills and was sensitive to all kinds of rare spiritual herbs. Now that she heard about immortal herbs and Nongju's loss of composure, it was hard for her not to be tempted. When Lanfeng glanced at her and moved to Nongju's side in a flash. She took out the jade archive from Nongju's hand and injected her divine sense into it to have a look. She was immediately captivated by what she saw. After a long time, she came to her senses and moved to Lu Yanqing's side, passing the jade archive to her in silence. Lu Yanqing could not wait to receive it. After a brief examination, her delicate body trembled and she eagerly immersed herself in the fantasy world of the immortal herbs inside the jade archive. Yu Qianqiu waited for a while and grew impatient. At this rate, there was nothing they could do. He immediately shouted, "Great miracle healer Lu, we don't have time to wait for you. Everyone, quickly turn it around. One look is enough. Once we enter the immortal herb garden, we can look at the real thing." When Lu Yanqing regained her senses, she looked a little embarrassed. However, she still reluctantly passed the jade archive to the others. Thus, the jade archive was turned around in everyone's hands and finally returned to Yu Qianqiu's hands. Those who had seen the jade archive had their eyes lit up. Not to mention the miraculous effects of the immortal herbs, just the value of each stalk in divine-grade spirit stones was enough to make one's heart palpitate. After looking at the contents of the jade archive, they compared it to the items in the cultivation world. The items in the jade archive were simply rubbish. Everyone was considered to have seen a lot in the cultivation world. The details of the jade archive were intricately engraved, definitely not the work of an ordinary person. In the cultivation world, they had never seen something so lifelike engraved on a jade archive. Everyone knew that with their cultivation, they would not be able to achieve such a feat. However, there was one thing they could be sure of: this jade archive was not a fake. Yu Qianqiu put away the jade archive. Disregarding everyone's agreement, he said indifferently, "The underground palace is very complicated and dangerous. Everyone, follow closely. I won't be responsible if anything happens." He turned around and entered. Unexpectedly, while everyone was still hesitating, Hu Chengshou took the lead and followed behind Yu Qianqiu. Nongju was next, then Lu Yanqing, followed by Wen Lanfeng, Li Duxing, Sikongju. At this point, there was nothing more to think about. Everyone entered the underground palace one after another. Those who were overly cautious and did not want to enter could not bear the consequences of offending Yu Qianqiu. Thus, they could only follow the crowd and enter. In the blink of an eye, the secluded valley outside became empty. The world inside the underworld was indeed vast. The passages were as dense as a woven web. If one was not careful, it was possible to take a wrong turn. It was obvious that the underworld had gone through many twists and turns. Many places had collapsed ruins. In addition, Yu Qianqiu had said that this place was dangerous. Everyone followed closely behind the people in front, afraid that they would lose track of them. Under Yu Qianqiu's guidance, everyone soon arrived at the Holy Temple. Here, Yu Qianqiu stood in front of the tunnel that the Holy Temple had created and waited for a while. When everyone had arrived, he secretly counted the number of people. When he found that everyone was present, he immediately waved his hand and pointed to the surrounding walls. He smiled and said, "Since everyone has come here, we can't let you come empty-handed. It's good to broaden your horizons. Everyone can take a look at the carvings on the surrounding walls. Can anyone guess who these carvings are?" Hearing this, everyone looked around curiously. From the carvings on the walls, they could tell that they were from a very long time ago. On the left and right sides, there were carvings of 6 generals in battle armor. All of them looked mighty and extraordinary. Everyone couldn't help but look at the high platform in the middle where the 12 generals were staring. The carving there was of a scholar with only his back visible. It looked like he was splashing ink by the side of a table. Hu Changshou, who was standing next to Yu Qianshou, stared at the carvings with suspicion. He muttered, "Could it be that the one in the middle is the legendary emperor of the underworld?" Clap, clap. Yu Qianshou suddenly clapped his hands. The crisp sound echoed in the holy temple. Yu Qianshou smiled and said, "Palace Lord who has a good eye. When I first saw him, I couldn't believe that this scholar was the legendary emperor of the underworld. However, the truth is the truth. This person is indeed the emperor of the underworld." Gasps could be heard in the holy temple. That was the legendary emperor of the underworld. Everyone's eyes widened as they carefully looked at the scholar. The more they looked, the more they felt that the back of the scholar was very mysterious. It would have been better if he had only shown his back, but it gave everyone a mysterious feeling. Everyone's hearts involuntarily filled with awe and veneration. No one could have imagined that they would see the legendary emperor of the underworld. Although it was just a mural with a back, the back of that illusory figure was finally revealed. Yu Qianshou smiled as he stood to the side and looked at everyone's reaction. The reason why he introduced all this was to let everyone get used to it. With the back of the emperor of the underworld as a cushion, they wouldn't feel weak when they went out and met the shrimp soldiers and crab generals of the immortal world. "Do you know who the figures on the 2 sides of the wall are?" Yu Qianshou asked as he pointed to the 2 sides of the wall. After looking at it for a while, everyone shook their heads slightly. That era was too far away from them. In the legends that were still being passed down, everyone only knew about the immortal emperor and the emperor of the underworld. They knew that these two were the rulers of the immortal world and the underworld. Everything else was vague. Yu Qianshou was indeed ready to start enlightening them. He was ready to open up a wider world for them to accompany him on his journey. He stood there and said with assurance, "Under the immortal emperor of the immortal world, there are 12 immortal monarchs. Under the emperor of the underworld, there are 12 underworld generals. The figures on the 2 sides of the wall are the 12 underworld generals of the underworld." 12 underworld generals. Everyone was in an uproar. Their minds were in a mess as they kept looking at the carvings on the 2 sides of the wall. "Everyone, don't be too concerned. The experts of the immortal world and the underworld are not as scary as you think." Yu Qianshou smiled faintly and said, "Let me tell you the truth. After I used the teleportation array to go there, I have killed dozens of cultivators from the immortal world." His words caused an uproar in the underground palace. Nongzhu snorted coldly and said, "Are you kidding me?" Yu Qianshou chuckled and said, "I'm not kidding. In fact, there are many people in the immortal world whose cultivation base is lower than ours. You will understand when you see them. Of course, there are many who have a higher cultivation base than us." As he said that, he suddenly untied the storage pouch hanging on his waist and took out the things inside. With a "hua" sound, a pile of shiny black spirit stones piled up to his shoulder. Yu Qianshou casually picked up a spirit stone from the pile and said with a smile, "Everyone, do you know what this is? I snatched these from the immortal world. Everyone, take a piece and have a look." Everyone stared at the pile of spirit stones with their mouths agape. They could vaguely guess what it was, but none of them dared to confirm it. Standing to the side, Hu Changshou reached out to grab a piece and held it in his palm. He immediately exclaimed, "Divine-grade spirit stones. They are really divine-grade spirit stones." His exclamation was shocking. Adding on to the fact that Yu Qianshou had asked everyone to take a piece to have a look, everyone immediately reached out and grabbed a piece from the air. A moment later, cries of a divine-grade spirit stones filled the entire holy palace. Everyone stared at the pile of divine-grade spirit stones in disbelief. If a divine-grade spirit stone was equivalent to 100 million high-grade spirit stones, then wouldn't the total value of the divine-grade spirit stones here be more than 1 trillion high-grade spirit stones? In an instant, everyone's eyes were burning with passion. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.